My name is Kelly Deyoe, and I'm honored to be here to speak with you this morning. Danielle actually hit it on the head this morning in her children's sermon there. We have to be careful with what we say and what we do to do no harm. Pastor Brooke asked me to begin a 4-part sermon series about the hashtag BUMC. And the hashtag BUMC, I don't know if she had mentioned it, is meant to remind us of who we are when we're at our best. As the people of God called United Methodists, we are faithful followers of Jesus, seeking to make the world a better place. The first 3 weeks will be spent reminding ourselves of what it means to be the United Methodists by illuminating John Wesley's general rules of the United Methodist Church: to do no harm, to do good, and to attend upon all the ordinances of God, or to put it shortly, to stay in love with God. John Wesley was the founder of United Methodism, developed these rules for his early society in the Methodist movement in England, and enumerated a few examples of each. Wesley said, "It is therefore expected of all who continue therein that they should continue to evidence their desire of salvation by exemplifying these 3 rules." He believed that these rules could lead to a more vibrant and faithful Christian life, both individually and communally. Micah 6:8 from our reading this morning: to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God sums up what it means to follow these 3 rules. Please pray with me. O God, who gives us insight and wisdom, pour out your Spirit on us here gathered in your name. May the words I offer be the words that you would have me say, and add your understanding so that we may be inspired to live out your word in our daily lives. O God, our rock and our Redeemer. So today we'll focus on the first rule: do no harm. With this rule, we need to take a good hard look at ourselves and contemplate all the different ways that what we say or do or don't do may cause harm. This rule challenges us to be mindful of our actions, words, and intentions in our interactions with others in the world and around us. In such an intercultural, interdependent, and diverse community and world in which we live, sometimes it may be difficult to identify when we actually have done any harm. The rule leads us to cultivate a spirit of compassion, empathy, and understanding. I just realized I didn't add in here that doesn't mean that we have to be a doormat either, let people walk all over us. It's okay to disagree, and it's okay to argue on the points, but it's not okay to make it personal. I just thought I should add that before I forget later. But we must be mindful of our choice of words and be truthful in our speech. Our words hold great power and can be used to build each other up, speak the truth with love, or tear others down with gossip, slander, and harmful speech. But our actions speak louder than words and should align with our beliefs and values as United Methodists. We should strive to live with integrity, honesty, and kindness, showing respect and dignity for all. We also must be mindful and aware of the impact on the environment by what we do or don't do. By far the most insidious, in my opinion, is unintentional harm, where we don't realize we've actually done something to hurt someone else. This rule requires some deep introspection. We need to be mindful of our own motivations, our choice of words and choice of actions. Bishop Job, in his book, 3 Simple Rules, writes, "To do no harm means that I will be on guard so that all my actions and even my silence will not add to injury to another of God's children or to any part of God's creation." Doing no harm means respecting the cultures and life situations of all who may be affected by our decisions. And we can boil down a lot of the harm that we do individually or as a congregation or as a church to when we think of somebody as the other, as not belonging. Probably the best way to describe that is when we divide people by us and them, or those people. And I'm sure we've all done it one time or another. Those sun devils, or those wildcats, those fundamentalists, or those progressives, those Democrats, or those Republicans. And the list goes on. But we as people of God are called to avoid the harm that is being done by othering. We do harm when we look at someone as an outsider to make ourselves feel superior or diminish them. We are all equal in God's eyes. Jesus tells us in the Gospel of Matthew, "You shall love your neighbor as yourself, and do to others as you would have them do to you." The gospel of Jesus is love. So we must first think, what is the most loving thing I can do in this situation? Certainly not excluding or othering someone. Do no harms means not to discriminate based on age, gender, sexual orientation, race, religion, or anything of the like. Sometimes we may not even realize we have these biases. Holding on to these biases diminishes the person and maybe even denies them the opportunity you may have to offer. We are saying they are not good enough. They are less than. We are compounding their emotional and spiritual pain when we separate them from belonging. The people we need to lift up and celebrate may have a wealth of untapped knowledge that we will be missing out on if we look the other way. We may not be able to help, and they may be able to help us. We don't know what we may learn once we drop our guard and subtle prejudices that are holding us back from fully living into a Christ-like life. Inclusiveness and justice go hand in hand when it comes to doing no harm. In our society over the years, we've had many biases, discrimination, and preconceived notions that were all followed with the best of intentions that have caused great harm. To name a couple early examples are race discrimination and gender bias. The exploitation of blacks into slavery in early America caused a split in the Methodist Church of the day. We've learned from that, moved forward in the church, but some of those underlying biases remain today and we need to remove. In society, there's still discrimination based on race, including, in some cases, higher interest rates, voter districting, higher traffic stop rates, higher arrest rates for the same crimes as whites, and racial profiling. Are we making them the other and avoiding, or are we complicit by not noticing or speaking up? Are we excluding people of color from activities that may be mutually beneficial to them and us in the church and society? By discriminating, we are not allowing people to live into their full potential as part of the family of God. We are not living into our full potential as followers of Christ when we discriminate. Early female writers, including Louisa May Alcott and the Bronte sisters, wrote using male synonyms to get their books published. Jane Austen had hers published anonymously. They couldn't get them published under their own name because they were women. Incredible harm can come from gender bias. Even in today's age, we see women researchers publishing with their initials instead of their name. We still have wage gap between men and women and the glass ceiling, where women can only get so far in an organization. In certain denominations, women aren't even allowed to preach. Even in the United Methodist Church, women were not allowed to become pastors till 1956. People today, even in the United Methodist Church, will leave a church if the lead pastor is female. I see you guys have no problem here, though. I saw it happen at St. Mark's when Sharon Ragland, one of the finest pastors I've ever been associated with, was appointed there in July 2010. People left the church. Gender bias continues in the church and as we continue to make women the other when they, in fact, in my opinion, are the backbone and do most of the necessary work of the church. At this year's Desert Southwest Annual Conference that just concluded this last Sunday, we recognized past harm caused by clergy and lay leaders' sexual misconduct in the United Methodist Church. An apology was offered in an attempt to make whole the people harmed and prevent the harm in the future. Recognizing that we have done harm allows us not to repeat that harm in the future and try to rectify the situation. This apology was read in all of the annual conferences in the United Methodist Church around the world. It starts out, the United Methodist Church apologizes for the times we allowed our desire to protect the church to outweigh our desire to care for victims and survivors of sexual misconduct. We have allowed polity and protection of the institutional church prevent us from holding persons accountable, thus perpetuating harm within our local churches and other ministry settings and damaging the whole United Methodist connection. We apologize for the times we have not listened to you, doubted your stories, ignored your wounds, and have not tended to your pain. We believe this has contributed to allowing an unsafe culture to exist. The United Methodist Church, by their actions or inactions, are acknowledging that there was even a problem, perpetuated tremendous harm on those involved. I noticed a couple of people at annual conference breaking down in tears over this apology. Doing no harm also means to face up to what we have done, hold it up to the light of God, and ask for forgiveness for what we have done and start on the road of reconciliation. Another way we can do harm is having preconceived notions against other people for no other reason than minor details. Things that once we are educated and introduced to, no longer change our behavior toward these people. We may not even be aware that we have these subtle influences against certain people. Just a couple of examples of where we may have biases are like the homeless here in Tucson, or the immigrant population, or the Native American population. We are all children of God. By ignoring or pretending we don't see the homeless, we are diminishing them as people and putting them on the margins of society. We are doing harm. We are called by God to treat everyone as a child of God. We are called to educate ourselves on the facts of each situation and not prejudge them as the other. I know that I've personally had difficulties in the past with people who have a lot of tattoos. I always thought of them as rough and biker types. They were the other, and I always watched them cautiously. I had an experience not that many years ago where I was shocked by my own prejudices. I didn't realize my prejudice until they revealed their true selves. I'd stopped at a La Salsa restaurant at the corner of Speedway and Wilmot for lunch one day, and I saw these 4 young men coming in with tattoos on both arms, and one with tattoos even on his neck. 2 of them came in on motorcycles and 2 in a car, and I just assumed they were gangbangers or the like. They sat down and at a table right in my line of sight, and what they did convicted me and made me feel small and judgmental. Once their food was on the table, they held hands over the meal and said grace, and then began to discuss audiovisual and technical details about an upcoming worship service. They revealed their true selves and characters, and I felt so small for having prejudged them as less than. That moment changed the way I look at everyone. Everyone is equal and deserving of my attention and time and best wishes until proven otherwise. I was humiliated because of all people, having been judged myself for being in a wheelchair, had judged someone else. I'd put a whole class of people as the other. I was doing harm seeing them as less than. I was excluding them as members of the family of God for no other reason than their tattoos. Nadia Bolz-Weber overcame any stigma of having tattoos on both arms and across her chest when she founded the House for All Sinners and Saints in Denver as an ordained Lutheran pastor. She wrote 3 New York Times bestsellers, including Accidental Saints, Finding God in All the Wrong People. The light of God shines in all people, regardless of the package they come wrapped in, and how we may misjudge them to begin with is doing harm. Doing no harm requires us to stop judging people, period. The harm done can be enormous and far-reaching. It stops when we look to the heart of those we place as the other. Also at this year's annual conference, we recognized and rectified harm brought upon one of our own clergy. In 2008, Susan Morgan, a gay pastor in the Desert Southwest Conference, surrendered her credentials because of how she had been discriminated against in the church because of who she was. At the most recent general conference, all harmful and discriminatory language regarding sexual orientation was removed from the Book of Discipline. So in 2024, at the Desert Southwest Annual Conference, Susan Morgan was reinstated as an elder in full connection in the United Methodist Church. Recognizing the harm is but one step. Knowing that the apology and rectifying the situation does not make the person whole. The damage which has been done, they will live forever, as with the case of sexual misconduct in the church. The harm is far-reaching. As the people of God, we ask for forgiveness for our short-sightedness and inability to see to the heart of the matter, that we were in fact doing harm and treating homosexuals as the other. Even our own lifestyles can be causing harm. We think about our nice, cool houses and use fossil fuels has done to the planet and countless people through violent climate change. Our choices of what we buy can perpetuate child labor in other countries or abusive practices in those countries. And I know you're thinking, you're just one person, what can you do? What can you do to do no harm by lifestyle changes? You can do plenty. We can buy fair trade products to reduce the harm done in poor developing countries. Fair trade helps achieve sustainable and equitable relationships where they will receive higher payments and improve social and environment standards. We consider going solar for our homes. We can consider hybrid or electric cars to reduce harmful impact on the environment. We can recycle, collect or reuse rainwater. We can bike to work on cooler days. Our choices have consequences, and we may be doing harm without even realizing it. Today, well, time is short today, so I'm going to mention the harm we have done when we're actually trying to do good with some of our church service projects. We can harm others just by doing what we think is right by what we think is doing right for who we're trying to help if we don't consult the people we are doing it for first. There's an excellent book I'd refer you to called Toxic Charity: How Churches and Charities Hurt Those They Help by Robert Lupton. Let me read you an excerpt from the book. Why do we miss this crucial aspect in evaluating our charitable work? Because as compassionate people, we have been evaluating our charity by the rewards we receive through service, rather than the benefits by the served. We have failed to adequately calculate the effects of our service on the lives of those reduced to objects of pity and patronage. He gives an example and points out the money spent on one campus ministry trip to Central America to repaint an orphanage would have been sufficient to hire 2 local painters, 2 full-time teachers, and purchase new uniforms for every student in that orphanage. So even trying to do good, we can be doing harm. I can't end today without at least mentioning gossip is doing no harm. I cut out 1.5 pages of this from my talk this morning, but the point is we are diminishing people by participating in gossip, setting them aside as the other, and that somehow we're superior. I choose not to participate in gossip, and I'm mindful of the words I use when I speak to or of other people. Following the first rule of doing no harm is not passive avoidance of behaviors, but an active awareness and response to systems and attitudes that inflict harm on a regular basis without thought or regret. A part of our invitation to the world, to our neighbors, is to come to this understanding and experience of doing no harm as we are made into followers of Jesus Christ. The first rule underscores Wesley's concern for ethical behavior and social responsibility among Christians, and pushes us to act with justice and avoid of actions that cause unnecessarily harm and suffering. As people called United Methodists, we must be mindful of our words, actions, or even inactions that make someone the other. As we reflect on John Wesley's rule to do no harm, let us recommit ourselves to a life of love, kindness, and compassion. May we be the instruments of God's peace and healing in this world that often yearns for grace and understanding. In doing no harm, we fulfill the greatest commandment of loving God and loving our neighbors as ourselves. Amen.